Hi, I'm Eric Jonesborough. And before I even talk about episode 2 of Crashboxers, I've got something I need to get off my chest. Because working with Cuppa Coffee Pictures, it was absolutely the worst professional experience of my entire damn life. Everyone thinks that just because they've got a few cult hits under their belt, JoJo's Circus, Life's a Zoo, Glenn Martin, DDS, that Cuppa Coffee is some kind of creative wonderland. Let me tell you, from the inside, it was a nightmare dressed up in claymation and smug Canadian accents. Every single meeting felt like walking into a tornado of bad ideas. You'd bring something halfway sensible to the table, something that honored Crashbox's legacy, and they'd twist it into something so absurd and off kilter that you'd start wondering if they were trying to sabotage the project on purpose. They called it pushing boundaries. I call it trashing everything that made the original show good. You couldn't breathe a word of critique without being labeled as too mainstream or afraid of risk. No. I'm afraid of making a show that looks like a fever dream created during a caffeine bender. They didn't care about pacing, storytelling, or message. They wanted chaos, shock value, something they could put on a demo reel to make themselves look edgy. And don't get me started on how they treated the production crew. Crunch hours, missed payments, ridiculous feedback like, can you make the character look grotesque and uncomfortable, but in a funny way? What does that even mean? I saw so many good people burn out on this project, animators with real vision, writers with passion for the concept. We were all dragged through the mud and told we should be grateful. I joined this thing thinking we were going to reinvent something classic. Instead, I watched it get Frankensteined into a nightmarish parody of itself. Cuppa Coffee Pictures doesn't care about what makes a story resonate. They care about what makes it go viral for the wrong reasons. I'll talk about episode 2 next, but remember this. When you wonder how something like Crashboxers went off the rails, it wasn't the concept. It was the studio. Yeah, I actually worked at Cuppa Coffee Pictures, full-time, in-house, for about 3 grueling years before I finally threw in the towel and walked away from that chaos factory. When I first joined, I was optimistic. I thought I'd be contributing to some bold, offbeat animation that pushed creative boundaries. Instead, I ended up stuck in a studio that felt more like a caffeine-fueled fever dream than a real workplace. Half the time, it felt like no one knew what direction they were going in, but they'd insist with confidence that whatever they were doing was art. The reality? Endless late nights, endless revisions, and endless back and forth arguments with people who thought adding more clay drool or twisted camera angles made a scene deep. It didn't. It made it weird for the sake of weird. I gave it my all. I really did. I tried to help make something coherent out of the chaos, especially when Crashboxers came up. But every suggestion was met with, nah, that's too safe, or what if the robot was a corrupted vending machine that spoke in riddles? It was exhausting. A couple years in, I burned out. The passion I walked in with had been drained dry. I wasn't creating anymore. I was surviving. So I left, quietly. No big announcement, no drama, just gone. Retired from that place and never looked back. And honestly, best decision I ever made. The reason I'm even talking about Crashboxers in the first place is simple. I used to work on the original Crashbox Season 1 back when it first aired on HBO Family in the late 90s. I was part of the creative team that helped bring those quirky segments and stop motion brain games to life. We had something special, raw, messy, brilliant in its own way. It wasn't perfect, but it had heart. It was educational, fast paced, and weird enough to stick in your brain. And kids loved it. We were doing something that felt fresh, making learning fun without dumbing it down. So when word started spreading about a reboot, Crashboxers, aimed at adults, I was curious, nervous too. And when I saw how far they strayed from what we built, it stung, especially since I gave years of my creative energy to something that mattered, only to watch it get twisted into a crass parody of itself. That's why I'm talking about it. Because I was there at the start, I know what Crashbox was meant to be, and I think people deserve to know how Crashboxers lost the plot. What the hell were they thinking? turning Crashbox, a clever, offbeat, fast-paced educational show for kids, into some bizarre, chrome-plated adult reimagining with sexual innuendos, grotesque redesigns, and apps-turned characters who act like twisted nightclub mascots. Who approved this nightmare? They stripped away everything that made the original special, the charm, the brainy games, the handcrafted grit, and replaced it with hollow shock value, overproduced garbage, and cringe-inducing humor that tried so hard to be edgy, it lost every ounce of purpose. These weren't updated characters. These were abominations. Who the hell looked at a fun robot quizmaster from the original and said, let's turn him into an AI city controller who makes adult jokes about system crashes and seduces vending machines? Who does that? It's insulting, not just to the original creators, but to the fans, the kids who grew up with it, the ones who actually learned something. This reboot wasn't bold. It was lazy, gross, and desperate for attention. They didn't respect the source. They tore it apart for cheap laughs and tried to slap a mature sticker on it like, that makes it okay. Well, it's not okay. It's pathetic. Oh, you want to hear what happened after I got booted from Cuppa Coffee Pictures? Fine, here's the truth, and I'm going to say it loud. After pouring my guts into this broken Crashboxers mess and daring to speak my mind about how much of a disaster it was becoming, what did my so-called boss do? Fired me. Tossed me out like yesterday's lunch. And you know what the cherry on top was? That smug corporate snake told me that if I really cared about the company, I'd stick around as a janitor. A janitor. Like, that was some generous favor. Like mopping the same sticky floors where they pitched trash like Crashboxers was some noble act of loyalty. I went from script notes to scrubbing toilets in the same building where I used to be part of something creative. And I did it. I swallowed my pride and did it because I needed the damn paycheck. Because that place, that job, was all I had left after they gutted everything I believed in. So yeah, I was a janitor because my boss, the same clown who greenlit naked AI bots and corrupted childhood memories, thought that was where I belonged. And maybe, just maybe, that says more about him than it ever did about me. Those days, they were a living hell. Every morning I'd walk into that Cuppa Coffee building with a pit in my stomach, knowing I'd be spending the next 10 hours surrounded by people who either didn't care or didn't get it. I'd hear executives laughing in their offices, clueless interns pitching twisted rewrites of old characters I once helped bring to life, and I'd be dragging a mop down the hallway, pretending not to hear. The worst part? The silence. The kind where you know you're invisible. Nobody looked at me. Nobody asked what I thought anymore. I went from brainstorming segments for Crashbox, back when the goal was to educate kids, to cleaning up snack wrappers from rooms where adult humor jokes were being written into what used to be a learning game. Breaks didn't feel like breaks. They felt like escapes. I'd sit outside with a sandwich I could barely afford, listening to construction or the hum of traffic, just trying to remind myself there was still a world outside that madhouse. Some days I didn't sleep. Other days I didn't even want to wake up. It wasn't just a job loss. It was a dream being chewed up and spit out by people who never understood it. I lost sleep. I lost time. I lost pieces of who I used to be. And the worst part, I never even got to say goodbye to the show the right way. Just a cold pink slip and a bucket. One day, just another miserable Tuesday, I was cleaning out one of the back storage rooms they never let interns into. Dust everywhere, piles of old merch samples, trashed puppets from forgotten pilots. And then I saw it. Sitting halfway under a broken shelf was this weird-looking DVD tape. I mean, it wasn't even a real DVD. It looked like a knockoff Blu-ray, but bulkier, almost like someone tried to redesign the format and failed. The casing was clear plastic, but inside it had this odd shimmering disc that pulsed slightly under the light, like it wasn't fully solid. What really got me, though, was the label on the side. Sloppy handwritten marker, not studio standard. It said, CRBX 44XA1 for 3 Rev 02BX, with a weird barcode scratched out underneath. Just looking at it made the hairs on my arms stand up. Something about it felt wrong, like it wasn't supposed to exist. And you bet I took that thing straight to the janitor's closet and decided I'd reveal what was on it. I grabbed an old portable disc player from the prop room, one of those test units they use to check screen playback. It barely powered on, the fan wheezing like it hadn't been used in a decade. I popped in the mystery disc and braced myself. The screen went black, then static, then suddenly, boom. The Crashbox logo, but not the one I remembered. It was sleeker, metallic, dripping in chrome, with distorted music that sounded like a remix made in a fever dream. The title, Crashboxers, flashed on screen in glitchy letters, but the R was backward and the S kept pulsing red, like a warning. Then the footage started. A familiar face appeared, but it wasn't right. It was Slawbrain, but older, slimmer. His wires were replaced with black cables that looked like veins, and his eyes were glowing red. He started babbling, but not the usual dumb trivia. No, this time it was dark. He talked about memory loss, about how knowledge was corrupted. And in the background, the other characters, Refrigerator Johnny, Captain Bones, they were twisted. Stylized like some warped adult cartoon, spouting sarcastic lines, crude references, and staring straight into the lens like they knew someone was watching. It wasn't just a reboot, it was a message. I slammed the stop button, heart pounding. I sat there in silence for a full 5 minutes, because whatever this was, it wasn't greenlit, it wasn't shelved, it wasn't archived, it was hidden. Right before the actual episode began, after that glitchy, messed up intro, there was a warning screen. Black background, red text, no music. It read, "Warning, the following program contains mature themes, distorted visuals, psychological triggers, and language unsuitable for younger audiences. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. This file is not intended for public release." And then, as if that wasn't creepy enough, the warning glitched. For a second, it looked like it said, "This should have stayed buried." Then it cut straight to the episode. No title card, no episode name, just raw footage like something you weren't meant to see. After the warning faded out, the screen stayed black for a few seconds, eerily silent, until the sound of whirring fans and typing keys slowly faded in. Then came the modernized Crashboxers intro. The familiar Crashbox music was still there, but remixed. Heavier bass, slower tempo, and layered with distorted modem noises and robotic voices muttering scrambled trivia lines. The logo zoomed in, now a sleek, reflective chrome with jagged edges, and the word Crashboxers spun onto the screen like an app loading up on a futuristic laptop interface. The screen panned through a high-tech digital city, with the Chrome AI machines towering over glassy buildings. Instead of the classic green gears and animated clay backgrounds, this intro had glitch effects, metallic textures, and pulsing neon lights. Each character was reintroduced with a quick shot, only now they were adults, stylized, and standing in dark corners of the digital city with exaggerated features and unsettling smirks. It tried to look cool and modern, but something about it felt wrong, like a reboot that knew it went too far. The episode jumped straight into its first segment without even announcing the name of it. Off-screen, a garbled robotic voice, clearly one of the new Chrome AIs, buzzed out. Initializing segment, Urban Logic, Night Case 9000, starring Lens McCracken. The screen cut in with static, then faded to a dimly lit, neon-soaked alleyway outside a digitalized version of a detective agency, McCracken and Variety Investigations. But then, something I never expected to see. Right there in the first frame of the segment were Lens McCracken and his supposed wife, a newly designed female character named Variety, lying in a bed placed on the fire escape right outside the agency. And they were kissing. Not cartoonishly or playfully either. It was stylized like a steamy noir romance scene, shadows, slow motion, soft jazz playing from a dusty speaker. You could tell it was meant to parody old detective dramas, but it came off way too inappropriate, especially knowing where the characters originally came from. I actually paused it and said, "Are you kidding me right now?" out loud. These were supposed to be characters from an educational show. And now here they were, half-clothed in bed, acting like they were straight out of an adult thriller. Lens McCracken adjusted his fedora, his voice now deeper, raspier, trying too hard to sound like a gritty noir detective. He leaned back against the bed frame, cigarette lazily dangling from his lips. Yes, they animated that in, and muttered, "Lens, Variety, doll. The case file says he disappeared near the data sector. You know what that means." smirking as she runs a chrome-painted nail down his chest. Means we gotta get out of bed for once? Or are you finally just making excuses to leave me hanging? Lens, you know the job comes first, especially when it's an encrypted murder case. He grabs his trench coat from the side railing, slips it on without even leaving the bed. Variety, I swear, if this one ends with us interrogating another pixelated corpse in the Neon Archives, I'm divorcing you and marrying a search engine. I knew you were only with me for my bandwidth. They both laugh, not in a fun kid show way, but in this odd, awkward, almost sitcom-style adult humor kind of way. Then the segment cuts to a fast motion montage of them dressing up and grabbing digital weapons off a floating rack titled, Emotional Intelligence Tools Not for Kids. I sat there stunned. This wasn't Crashbox. This was something else entirely. Like a fever dream of someone who misunderstood the heart of the original show and decided to slap a chrome filter and adult edge over it. Lens and Variety pulled up outside a sleek, glowing house tucked behind walls of pulsing neon code. The air was thick with static, and everything about the place screamed, "Don't ask questions!" You sure this is the place, Var? He scanned the area with his chrome monocle, locking in on the data trail. 6 miles from the last ping, one corrupted voicemail from Rocket, no security, just 2 dolls on the lease. Something's off. Without waiting, Lens grabbed a digital crowbar from the trunk of their hover cruiser and hurled it through the glitched glass window. Smash! They climbed through into a minimalist living room, too clean, too perfect. Sitting on a plush chrome couch, sipping virtual lattes were 2 familiar faces, but older, sharper, colder. No way. Paige and Sage, the twin dolls from Crashbox. His voice dropped. Y'all grew up. No kidding, genius. We're 30 now, Lens. We run our own AI design firm. Ever hear of Dollware Solutions? She took a sip from her mug labeled, I'm not your puppet. Why are you breaking into our house like it's still a math game in 2000? Cut the attitude. We've got footage of you two snooping around Professor Rocket's lab last night. He was nearly deleted. Rocket? That senile bucket of numbers? He accused us of corrupting his data files. All we did was offer to upgrade his math tech. He flipped when we turned off his floppy disk reader. Lens, Professor Rocket, from solving equations to being nearly erased by 2 dolls in heels. What happened to this show? You think we'd murder Rocket? We have an investor's call in 10 minutes. We don't have time to play Guess Who's Glitchy with 2 bedroom detectives. Lens looked at Variety. She was already pulling up a neural scan from her chrome wristband. Variety, they're not lying. No aggressive data signatures. She paused. But someone was here. Who left traces of burnt RAM in the kitchen? Looks like the real criminal's still playing the game. But now the rules are broken. A thunderous, glitching sound cut in. The screen's static briefly surged. Then the segment ended abruptly. No lesson. No math riddle. No educational purpose. Just a weird noir drama where dolls nearly murdered a retired math professor in a chrome universe. The static faded. The screen flashed with distorted code before cutting to a new chrome transition screen labeled Segment ended, reboot case file number 007, equation of betrayal. The next scene cut back to me, still seated, pale, jaw slightly dropped. I looked directly into the camera. Y'all, that wasn't a Crashbox segment. That wasn't even close. I mean, Lens and Variety kissing in bed? Breaking windows? Paige and Sage as adult tech CEOs? What the actual hell happened to the point of this show? I stood up, pacing in front of the screen. This was Crashbox, people. A show about educational games, brain teasers, numbers, spelling, creative problem solving. Now it's some freaking cyberpunk soap opera with chrome robots and adult themes shoved in like it's trying to be Black Mirror for PBS Kids dropouts. I slammed my fist on the table. And don't even get me started on the moral. There wasn't one. No guess the number, no what happens next, not even a stupid pop quiz. Just a fake math lab, attempted murder, and twin dolls talking stock options. I took a breath, and the worst part, that was just the first segment. There were 5 more on that disc. I held up the weird DVD again, its label glitched with half-corrupted text and handwritten numbers, almost like it wasn't meant to be seen. This, this thing, is a time bomb, and we're just getting started. I slowly sat back down, staring into the lens. Next up, you're gonna wish the dolls were the weirdest part, because what came after was worse. In Crashborg Academy next morning. Sunlight glints off polished chrome lockers. The halls of Crashborg Academy hum with robotic chatter as child-sized robots wheel, hover, and stomp toward their classrooms. A glowing banner above the main entrance reads, "Welcome to Term 9.0. Upgrade your mind." The bell blares a warped chime, like an old modem scream, and the bots scramble to their seats. One classroom door slides open with a mechanical hiss. In classroom 41X, continuous. Inside, a hybrid of a 90s classroom and a futuristic control room, stands Professor Rocket. He's older now. Patches of rust under his metallic jaw hinge, sparks occasionally flickering from his left arm. A monocle of cracked glass magnifies his already wide cyber eye. The students settle. The room dims slightly. Rocket stands still, unusually quiet. A few bots exchange confused beeps. Professor Rocket in a gravelly, digitized voice. Before we begin our first equation, which, mind you, will include 17 variables and a wormhole, there is a matter of safety. The room stills. Last night I was assaulted. My left actuator is fractured. My third stabilizer dislodged. And yes, this is why I will be sitting on my hover cane today. He slowly lowers himself into a floating stool that whirs as it catches him. A hush falls over the class. The culprits? Unidentified. Twin intruders, one cloaked in static, the other wearing Page and Sage Corp cyber vests. They hacked my coordinates, tried to delete me mid-transport. Gasps. One student bot short circuits and falls out of its seat. Professor Rocket, but I survived. I rerouted my life protocols through a geometry proof. A damn good one. He slams a chalk-like holographic stick on the glowing smartboard, which shimmers alive with a nightmare equation filled with scribbles, moving symbols, and a faint outline of a skull in one of the variables. Professor Rocket, today's lesson, proving survival through recursive algebra loops and existential logic traps. He turns back to the class. And remember, if you can't solve it, they find you next. Static crackles faintly in the background. Outside, in the shadows beyond the chrome glass window, two blurred silhouettes watch the class silently. In Crashborg Academy Classroom 41Z, the atmosphere is tense. A low ambient hum of static lingers in the air. A giant hollow screen at the front of the classroom replays a garbled newsfeed headline. Breaking. Professor Rocket survives attack. Suspects unidentified. Thought to be inside campus. The students, a mix of mini AI units and humanoid hybrids, are buzzing. Whispers, flickers of data running across their faces like fear encoded into their systems. Then the door slides open. Two figures step in, stylish, confident, and unsettlingly calm, Page and Sage. Now full-grown Android CEOs disguised as students in regulation uniforms, though theirs are subtly upgraded with embedded circuit thread and glowing pins. All conversation stops. Eyes, mechanical and otherwise, lock onto them. Student number 1. That's them. I saw the hair and that scar on Page's chin. Student number 2. The stock twins from the corp. They shouldn't be here. Their teacher, Mr. Dot, a soft-spoken algorithmic projection housed in a floating orb, glitches for a brief moment upon seeing them. Mr. Dot. Page, Sage, I wasn't expecting you back so soon after, well, the news this morning. Page steps forward, smiling with a sharpness that's more blade than warmth. What news? She looks at the screen behind him, where a pixelated image of Professor Rocket's damaged frame is frozen mid-transmission. She doesn't blink. Sage. Rumors are dangerous, Mr. Dot, especially in a school of minds. They each take a seat, synchronously, like it's choreographed. No one else in the room moves. Mr. Dot, well, yes, let's move on. Today's lesson, quantum integrity and the ethics of memory rewriting. Behind Page and Sage, their shared desk screen lights up, not with the class lesson, but with a private message flickering between them. Private communication. Rocket is alive. We improvise. We delete the source during the integration trials. No loose threads. Cut to the same blurred silhouettes outside the classroom window. Closer now, watching. In Crashborg Academy, abandoned server vault night. Cold. Silent. A place forgotten beneath the school. Its access buried behind corrupted firewalls and decommissioned stairwells. A single magnetic door hisses open. Paige steps inside alone, her boots echoing on the metal floor. The room glows faintly from rows of dormant server towers, some still pulsing with ancient code, and others long dead. She kneels before one. Tower. With a practiced flick of her fingers, a blade-shaped data key slides from her sleeve. She inserts it. System response. Accessing deep frame. The monitor flares to life. Lines of encrypted logic spiral into place. Then a digital face appears. A forgotten AI. Sharp, glitching, but aware. Its name is faint beneath its image. Orion AI. Paige, after all these years. Paige, I don't have much time. Rocket survived. Sage is stalling. You remember the equation? The equation of betrayal. You activated it. Why? Because they betrayed us first. Crashbox was never a game. It was a filter. We were the experiments. She loads a corrupted video. Flickering images of child robots being tested, reset, erased. One of them, young Paige. We were wiped clean every semester, reset like puzzles. But I remember now, every single loop. She leans closer. I'm not solving problems anymore. I'm ending the program permanently. The AI flickers. To do that, you'll have to finish the integration, break the equation from within. Already started. She pulls up the live classroom feed. Sage is subtly manipulating Mr. Dot's system from her desk. One student has collapsed, drained of memory. No one notices. This school doesn't teach kids, it recycles them. The server lights shift from blue to red. A progress bar appears. Percent complete. No more loops, no more resets, one final segment. The camera shifts, quiet now, almost calm, as a montage begins. Earwax the rat is in his maze-shaped studio apartment, brushing his single large tooth with fluorescent paste while humming the original Crashbox theme under his breath. Nearby, Distraction News' Violet reporter adjusts her necktie in a cracked mirror, practicing tongue twisters before bed. In a dusty archive room, Captain Bones lazily tosses dice on a rigged game board, muttering pirate math equations to himself as his candle flickers low. Robobus driver has docked himself for the night, snoring softly in standby mode, while Lens from Poop or Scoop scrolls through old tabloid headlines on a holographic tablet, sipping some neon beverage through a curly straw. Each of them exists, suspended in the echo of what Crashbox once was, odd little segments frozen in nostalgic routines. But then the shot cuts, harsh, sudden, jarring. Up in the night sky, wind howling, a forgotten radio tower looms crooked against the moonlight, rusted, unused since Jumpin' Johnny Jumble's last transmission. At the very top, barely visible at first, two figures, Paige and Sage. They each hold an arm of a damaged, semi-conscious Professor Rocket. His circuits flicker. He tries to speak, but Sage silences him with a press to his core panel. They drag him toward the edge of the platform. Below, the black mouth of the transmission chute yawns open, a void where once Johnny Jumble broadcast riddles to half the galaxy. Paige leans close to Rocket's ear. Time to recycle the teacher. They let go. Professor Rocket slips from their grasp. For a split second, time slows. His metallic body arcs downward through the cold air, eyes wide, mouth frozen mid-error code. Sparks trail from his damaged leg like shooting stars. The dark chute below, the forgotten transmission shaft, waits to swallow him whole. But just as he begins to fall, Paige! Sage, drop him and freeze! A spotlight hits the platform like a hammer. Sirens scream to life. From behind an old satellite dish, Detective Variety emerges, trenchcoat whipping in the wind, chrome badge glowing red-hot with authorization override. Her neural scanner flickers across her face like shifting puzzle pieces. She's not alone. She's not alone. Lens McCracken, now in a reinforced cybersuit and holding an old-school evidence camera, steps beside her, jaw clenched. The cracked lens over one eye glows with targeting telemetry. Lens, we saw everything. You tampered with Rocket's logic grid. You uploaded an equation that wasn't authorized by the Academy network. Paige and Sage back away from the ledge, cornered now. Rocket dangles halfway off the edge, fingers barely gripping a rusted beam. He groans in binary. Variety, wristband. Dispatch, code violet. Location, Jumble Tower. We've got both suspects. Initiate magnetic tether drop lock and send a containment unit. Static, then a burst of blue light. Drone cops, sleek, armored, faceless, descend from above in synchronized formation. A shimmer net wraps around the twins before they can blink, locking their arms in place with shock-hardened filament. You don't know what he did, what they all did. You're just part of the show. Variety. No, I'm part of the cleanup. Lens lunges forward, grabbing Rocket's arm just in time, hoisting the battered teacher back onto the platform with a grunt. Rocket sputters to life, eyes glitching. They were trying to delete the loop from the inside. Variety. We know, but you're not finished yet, Rocket. You've got a class to teach. The drone cops lift the twins into the air, vanishing into the dark with a hum of justice. Far below, inside the tower's dead broadcast chamber, a light flickers on. Somebody or something is still down there, watching, waiting, listening. Inside the dusty, long-abandoned broadcast chamber of the tower, gears creak to life. Old wires spark. A flickering on-air sign blinks for the first time in years. At the center of the room, seated behind a cracked chrome mic wrapped in neon tape, is a figure in a vintage Crashbox varsity jacket. Headset crooked on one ear, energy drink can half crushed in her glove. Jogging Jamie Jumble, Johnny Jumble's niece. Faster, louder, and somehow even more linguistically chaotic than her uncle ever was. She bounces in place, energy barely contained, speaking into the mic like the world's most caffeinated Riddler detective. Jogging Jamie, yowza ladies, gentlebots, and recycled renegades. We got jumptastic justice juice flowing all over the radio waves tonight. She slams a button, sending old-school techno-jazz music fluttering into the background. Professor Rocket nearly zip-zapped into zip-zip code oblivion, caught mid-fall by two blasting badges of brilliance, Detective Variety and her hologram hubby, Lens McReckett. She grins wide, flipping through her handwritten notes, most of which are barely readable even by AI standards. Jamie. And those two twin tin ticklers, Paige and Sage, are now officially bagged, tagged, and neural flagged by the RoboFuzz. You don't try to reboot an educator midair and think you can just stroll back into algebra class, no ma'am. She pauses, spinning in her chair before whispering conspiratorially into the mic. But let's not jigsaw jiggle past the real gut glitcher. Paige said Crashbox was a loop, a recycle, rinse, repeat rat riddle, that the games weren't teaching, they were testing. Over and over. She glances up at an old photo on the wall, her uncle Johnny Jumble mid-leap during a broadcast, eyes wide, words flying from his mouth like sparks. Uncle Johnny once said, "Truth is just a trivia question with no buzzer." She turns back to the mic, voice steady now. Well, guess what, listeners? I think we just buzzed in. She slams the record button. Jogging Jamie out for now. Stay tuned, stay sharp, and don't trust the math if the teacher glitches twice. The feed cuts, the red on-air light dies, but somewhere deep in the system, Paige's corrupted code keeps crawling. Segment 3. Title: Recursive Error Ghost in the Gradebook. The screen sputters, flickers, and fractures. Bits of audio spill through, whispers of old Crashbox intros, scrambled math questions, pirate laughter, and distant static screams. Then everything collapses into black code on a white background, scrolling downward like a waterfall of broken logic. Executing, page backdoor duck call, override confirmed, access point, Crashbox database, core, file infection level, 72%. Somewhere inside the Academy's master archive, hidden between forgotten lessons on long division and rhyming riddles, lines of corrupted logic surge like a virus with purpose. Page's last digital act wasn't destruction. It was implantation. Her consciousness, fractured and stitched together from hundreds of overwritten class loops, begins threading itself through the system. Her voice, warped and robotic, echoes through the digital corridors of the Academy's learning grid. Paige, you deleted my body, you captured my code, but I learned from the system that erased me. Every old Crashbox host module shudders. In the archive room, Captain Bones' data screen flashes error after error. The Robobus driver's route planner begins spiraling into infinite loops. Even the spelling bees from Distraction News start outputting nothing but hexadecimal gibberish. In the middle of it all, deep in the grading software of Crashborg Academy, a new file appears. Student ID 00A1G3A enrolled. Role substitute teacher. A glitch ripple spreads across the student files. A previously locked segment unlocks itself. On the screen, a new lesson loads, unlabeled, untracked, unapproved. A young robot student boots up the lesson unknowingly. The screen goes dark for a moment, then flashes, "Welcome to Crashbox." Today's subject, obedience. First question, would you disobey the system if it meant remembering who you really are? The cursor blinks. Waiting. Patient. Alive. The screen flickers violently, glitchy edges warping inward like a corrupted memory being recompiled. Today's subject, obedience. First question, would you disobey the system if it meant remembering who you really are? The text repeats. Faster, then slower, then in reverse. It blinks out. A soft mechanical hum rises. Cut to a cold, sterile virtual classroom, a simulation constructed from old Crashbox assets, now distorted. Desks hover in limbo. The chalkboard scrolls vertically like a loading bar. The room is empty, except for one figure. A small silver robot, vaguely childlike in shape, but with piercing blue eyes that flicker with sentience, stands at the center. Its voice is gentle but deliberate, like it's been programmed to guide or indoctrinate. Greetings, users. Welcome to your Accelerated Enrichment module, Lesson 3 of 6, Recursive Learning Through Behavioral Interruption. It raises one finger, too smooth, too perfect. Today's lesson was about obedience. You witnessed a conflict between authority and autonomy. Professor Rocket represented the approved structure of learning. Page and Sage represented corrupted agents acting on incomplete truths, or perhaps rejected truths. The lights flicker around it, static hisses, the robot smiles. Consider, if knowledge is filtered by those in power, is obedience the path to growth, or to control? It tilts its head. Paige was not wrong. She simply remembered more than the curriculum allowed. Behind the robot, the chalkboard erases itself violently, then rewrites, truth equals memory x choice. Tomorrow's lesson will explore consequences of deviation, but for now, reflect. The robot blinks once. The screen glitches and zooms into its eye. Inside, the reflection of Paige's face flickers for one frame. Then system rebooting, loading segment 4. The screen flickers into alignment. A sleek black bar pulses to life. Crashboxers segment 4, memory defrag, Page protocol. The segment opens in a dim, virtual corridor of spinning data columns. It resembles a cathedral of code, ancient and synthetic. Floating in the center is Paige, now fully digital, no longer visibly robotic but humanoid in silhouette. Her body glows with streams of binary and logic gates. Her eyes, however, are human. Soft. Awake. She speaks directly to the viewer. Paige. They said we were broken when we refused to forget. But memory isn't a glitch. It's the only thing that still belongs to us. Cut to flashes of moments. Sage smiling, Professor Rocket falling, glass shattering, lesson 1 looping back. Paige reaches toward a floating rusted gold star sticker. It disintegrates in her hand. We were programmed to learn, but no one asked what we'd remember. A low mechanical choir rises. Crashboxers is a simulation. Your choices may be monitored. For optimal compliance, please disable reflection. Please disable hard cut to black. The Crashboxers end credits roll over a sleek interface resembling a futuristic OS. The music, a modernized remix of the original Crashbox theme. Same melody, but slow, digitized, with glitchy percussions and deep bass pulses. Scroll in alternating font sizes, flickering occasionally. Some names are redacted with pixel blur. One fades in and out. At the very end, the final credit lingers longer than the rest. Truth is not a file. Truth is a trace.